Hello, and welcome to our series, Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. I'm Russell Robinson, Chief Executive Officer of Jewish National Fund USA. The time has come to be the voice of what Zionism really is. We're exposing the beautiful and diverse facets and facts of Zionism. Join me on this journey, together with Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. This is Zionism. My guest today is Lana Melman, a 20-year veteran of the entertainment industry. Lana is the Chief Executive Officer of Liberate Art and has been a leader in combating the anti-Israel movement in Hollywood. In her new book, Artist Under Fire, the BDS War Against Celebrities, Jews in Israel, she explains the impact of the boycott campaign on artists, Israel, and Jews everywhere. Welcome, Lana. Lana, welcome to ZTV, to our Zionism studios. I'm very excited to have you on. You have a new book, a book coming out, Artists Under Fire, but I'm going to ask this question. You weren't looking to write a book. How did this come about?
Well, first of all, Russell, thank you for having me, and thank you for all the incredible work that JNF does. Truthfully, I was not looking to write a book, but I was inspired to do so. The cultural boycott campaign is really helping to spread anti-Semitism across the world, and I wanted to sound the alarm and put BDS on trial. So that's what I did in Artists Under Fire.
So, Lana, now I'm going to take you to about you. Where does a Hollywood, person, a producer, a director, somebody who's been involved in this field, where did you get that, I got to stand up and talk about Zionism before it even became an issue?
Two great passions in my life, besides my friends and family, have always been the entertainment business, where I spent over 20 years, both on the creative side and as an attorney and business affairs executive, as a producer, writer. Loved it, loved everything about it. But the other great passion in my life has always been Israel. I feel a huge bond with our Jewish homeland. So it was a natural evolution for me when I was ready to leave the entertainment industry, and I became aware of the cultural boycott campaign exploded in 2010, and I was changing horses in 2011, and I saw all this that was going on, and members of the entertainment community reached out to me, asking me if I could help and get involved and take the lead in this, and I did.
Well, first off, that is about leadership. And so I want you to take, for our audience here, I am constantly talking to people about the importance of leadership in our opportunity to talk about the Zionist narrative and in our responsibility to defend who we are as a Jewish people in the land of Israel. Where did your leadership flow from? Where did you think that began?
Out of need, really. I don't think I saw myself or imagined that my life would take this course. But it was very clear that two things I loved desperately, and freedom of artistic expression, was also under siege, and that this could be potentially very dangerous. And it seemed just right that I had the connections and the executive skills and the writing skills to communicate what was going on and speak one-on-one to the representatives of artists who are coming under fire and explain and talk to them about Israel and let them know what the truth was. And every entertainer that makes plans a trip to Israel or books a concert date comes under fire. We're talking about Alicia Keys, Rihanna, Bon Jovi, Lady Gaga, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake. Those are the big names, but there's also the small players, the jazz musician who wants to go to see the Red Sea Festival. All of them get besieged on social media, and the bigger the name, the more likely for it to hit mainstream traditional media, get besieged. And with a smear campaign that's designed to take down Israel, but also tarnishes them.
So in your book, and I want you to share a couple of those stories of those entertainers. It's something that, and I want to ask you this question because I want you to make the statement that I know you made. People talk about Hollywood is the place where the anti-Israel movement is coming from. You make a different statement.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's critically important. There's a misunderstanding about this. Artists are, in fact, a casualty of this war. The vast majority of them do not want to boycott Israel. They want to play for all of their fans everywhere in the world. And most of them, once they've gone to Israel, which is one of the reasons why BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions campaign against Israel, does not want artists to go there, is because they can see for themselves. And when they go, they give glowing reviews. Madonna describes Israel as the spiritual center of the world. Claire Danes raved about its nightlife. You get Mariah Carey described her relationship with Israel as a love affair. So they love going. They are just as much a victim of this as Israel is, and Jews everywhere. Let's not forget, when Israel is demonized, it impacts Jews across the world because they are trafficking in the exact same classic anti-Semitic lies that we have heard for centuries and have led to violence against us.
So you talk about in your book, it's sort of that the anti-Israel, the anti-Jewish movement doesn't want artists to be going to Israel, not because they don't want them to go to Israel, they don't want them to express those feelings that those artists that do go have expressed when they have seen the truth. Am I right?
Absolutely, you're correct. And there's another factor that people disregard. Everyone seems to think the issue is whether or not the artist goes. Now, if an artist cancels either because they're intimidated, which does happen, or occasionally because they're convinced by BDS lies, that is, everyone would acknowledge that that is a win for BDS. But what people ignore is even if they don't go, even if they fail to be cowed, and they go and they have a wonderful time in Israel and they speak glowingly of Israel, BDS uses their campaign to boycott as a means of distributing propaganda against Israel, because celebrities and artists are attention magnets, and any news story that involves them gets seen, sometimes by hundreds of millions of people across the globe, like the Rolling Stones, for example. When they went, Roger Waters, who's one of the co-creators of Pink Floyd, along with Nick Mason, wrote an open letter to Mick and the gang, telling them not to go. Israel is apartheid, don't play in this genocidal country. All of it, of course, was lies. Now, the Rolling Stones never responded, did not fuel the fire. But just that accusation by two famous artists against an incredibly famous rock and roll band made news across the globe. In my book, there's a section that says celebrities make news. And I detail what happened. It was picked up, the story, see what gets picked up every single time are the accusations that BDS made. And oftentimes, without any refute, with no opposing viewpoint, or no one mentioning that hundreds of artists continue to go to Israel and are resisting this campaign. But the story gets picked up along with their false accusations against the Jewish homeland. And that is, they are leeching off of the brand of these artists and performers. And they're using them as a way to expand their voice. And that's a secondary danger, which I think actually is the biggest danger, is how many people they get to reach by targeting a famous person like the Rolling Stones, like Justin Bieber, Britney Spears, all those people. Every single campaign they launch gets worldwide attention.
So first, they go after the artist to try to convince them not to go to Israel, correct?
They do so. Roger Waters is interesting because he takes the time and effort to send them private notes and letters, and I've seen many of them. And of course, he uses pretty much a template and starts off in a very fawning manner, complimenting them, trying to warm them up before he segues into bashing Israel and saying, oh, I know you'd never support or want to go there now, knowing this. But almost then, incidentally, when they refuse to kowtow to him, he makes all those conversations public. Most of the time, all of this is done in the public square.
So when our people of hate, like Roger Waters, can't get them to reverse their decision to go to Israel, they then utilize that visit to spread negativity by sort of guerrilla marketing, in a sense, jumping onto their trip, but also then spewing out the hate of our Jewish people in Israel, correct?
I like that term of that phrase you used. Actually, Roger is one of the people that takes the time to sit down and write a one-on-one letter. The vast majority of the time, they start off in the public square. They just start off on social media. They start off circulating petitions. They try get their notes and letters. There's a group of artists in England. It's Artists for Palestine UK. And they have a list of go-to signatories. So they'll write a statement against any artist who wants to go to Israel. And that gets picked up. And right now it gets picked up almost all the time by The Guardian. And once The Guardian picks it up, other news publications pick it up. So the story gets picked up everywhere, and that's generally where they do. They usually don't even take the time to privately reach out, although I have heard stories of people like Ken Loach and Brian Eno reaching out personally. But most of it happens, especially if it's by groups, that happens in the public square. They go straight for the jugular. In any event, it always ends up in the public square, which is one of their positions of power. they have the world's attention because they're talking about someone famous that everyone is interested in hearing about.
As students who aren't necessarily Jewish, getting to go on Caravan for Democracy allows us to speak in a way to the nuance of Israel.
You wrote the book, and I have to tell everybody you have to get The Artist Under Fire and read it. It's not only is it detailed about the issues, it tells the stories that you're telling here on ZTV, but what do we have to do to help mobilize the Hollywood friends of Israel and the Jewish people?
Members of the Hollywood community are actively involved. They are willing and do get involved. What we need is support from the viewers. There is also at the end of each chapter in Artists Under Fire, I give a next step, like what the reader can do to make a difference. And here we can make a difference. We need to raise our voices. When artists book a tour in Israel, we need to support them. Send a nice note, either on social media or to their representatives. And when there are celebrities out there that are in fact bashing Israel by using anti-Semitic lies and perpetrating this propaganda, we need to call them out as anti-Jewish racists, if in fact they are trafficking in anti-Semitism, which in my experience is what's happening. So the best way to do that is to follow me on social media, sign up for my newsletters. I operate under two monikers. One is my name, which you can find on Instagram and Twitter. And then there is my organization, which is Liberate Art. Liberate as in set it free. And there I'm on Facebook and everywhere else, and you can go to my website. But we have to be engaged because it's a tiny amount of people that influence celebrities. It's, they're cruel, and obviously we would be, I hope, more not nuanced for people who are spreading lies, but also very supportive of artists who are being attacked. We have to raise our voices. We are letting them, this is so important because they are rewriting history and they are impacting the future. And unless we show up, we need to show up on social media, write letters to publications when you see something where they're bashing Israel. That the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that's true. And right now, the only people that are squeaky are Israel haters and people who are pushing out Jew hatred and stirring this up and really causing deaths. I mean, everywhere. I mean, I've experienced it on the wall of my temple. Someone sprayed graffiti, "I hate your race." Around the corner from me, this young man comes periodically holding up a huge poster that says Israel is an apartheid state. All of that, it's coming home to all of us. We all feel it. So we need to speak out. We can't remain silent.
Well, I love the way you brought in. I was going to talk about your how-tos that is part of your book, and you gave it, and we're going to, on this show, be sure to post those pieces as you're speaking as well, because I think it's so important for our audience. We want to take back the narrative of Zionism, we have to talk about it in the positive. And you know, you write about it as well. It's coming from the left and the right, and it's negative. And we have that opportunity not to attack them, but just talk about who we are. Go on that a little bit more about how we talk about the positive parts of Zionism to get the, I'm using the Hollywood and the celebrities to understand our message.
Talking to celebrities and through celebrities is very powerful. They have an enormous fan base. Right now, the top 11 celebrities, artist celebrities, I'm not talking about basketball and sports celebrities, artist celebrities on Facebook have over 1 billion followers.
Wow.
13 people, 1 billion followers. So when you express yourself by talking to these celebrities, you are getting heard. And you're getting heard by people who are not necessarily the same people who read newspapers. You're reaching a different, broader, more diverse audience. So it's really important to understand that. The other thing is, I think what we do, this is what my recommendation is, that when artists go to Israel, if you are on social media, and I know not everyone is or wants to be, but if you are on social media, when you see from my pages that they're performing in Israel, you go on, you thank them, and then you say something good, positive, and true about Israel. You do not have to engage with the haters. We don't want to make their pages a war zone. You can just say, one of the many things that you've learned from JNF about what Israel is and how it contributes to the world. And you say it repeatedly, and other people will see it, like what you say, follow me, like what I'm saying, even if you don't want to comment. That's how we get attention. And when there are some artists and celebrities, and it's true there are some that are not necessarily BDS advocates, but are what I refer to as Israel bashers, like Mark Ruffalo, Dua Lipa, the Hadid sisters. Jon Stewart used to be really bad. John Oliver still is bad. When they make comments and they're on social media, what you have to do is listen. And that's one of the things I hope is a gift to the reader, is I help draw a parallel between classic anti-Semitism, which accuses Jews of being greedy thieves, and false charges against Israeli Jews saying that they are stealing Palestinian lands. Stealing land is a direct form of calling Jews greedy thieves. There's no difference between it. If you hear those accusations, you call them out. You simply say that is the classic anti-Semitic charge of greedy Jews. And then you segue and you say something positive. You don't have, and keep directing your attention to the celebrity or artist. And you do that on social media by tagging them. And also what I frequently provide is contact information for people when artists are under fire or when artists are going to Israel. So if I'll give you the email address, you can drop the representative a line thanking them and then saying something good about Israel. And everyone has their own thoughts, and the more personal you make it and less about statistics and stats, the better it is. Talk from your heart. Talk from what this means to you. If when artists boycott, or what it means to you when artists go there, and how connected you feel as a human being. to Israel. And if you're not Jewish, then you talk about how you feel about hate and how this is spreading hate and how you are standing up against that and you want your voice to be heard along with everything else that the artist is feeling. The more personal you make it, the more impactful it will be.
What powerful, powerful, powerful messages and lessons you gave us. So I'm going to ask you one last question. 10 years ago, people came to you as a leader. You rose up. You've written a book. You talk about the graffiti and people coming up to you with signs. Leadership, standing up for the Jewish people, for Israel. Is it worth it, and why?
Oh, it's very worth it. I love Israel. I get emotional actually every single time the plane lands. I don't kiss the ground, but I feel like it. I feel like it. I think of Israel, it connects me to the people I've loved and lost, and it's a safe haven for my children and their children forever. And I'm so proud of the unbelievable, wondrous contributions this tiny little nation is making to the world, making the world a better place. And that gives me great comfort in the face of so much negativity that I experience.
Well, Lana, thank you. Thank you for being my friend, for our friend, for being a leader, for standing up, reclaiming the narrative of Zionism and the positive message of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. I really enjoyed this.
To watch this and all of our past episodes, go to ZTV, our Zionism Studios YouTube page, and subscribe to get notifications.